Welcome back to the scoop. Oh man, this is y'all think y'all seen something, y'all ain't seen nothing yet. Remember, this is the VET S.O.S channel. You do not have to drown in the sea of transition. Grab that VET S.O.S lifeline. And today on the scoop, we're gonna be sitting down with my man Ant-Man. I call him Ant-Man because y'all, look, this is going to be a fire conversation because just because y'all, and I'm going to show y'all the book. It's pocket size, but it packs a punch, right? So guess what? He writes through the grit. He writes through his energy. He writes from his soul, which is going to resonate through generations to come. Today, we're joined by Anthony Dyer, the powerful voice behind the raw memoir. Y'all see it right here, action-packed, Moonchild. Preparing out of windows, wondering what if, to charge it through the chaos of Afghanistan, to navigate in the tightropes between the courtroom and the court. Anthony's life reads like a symphony, pain, purpose, and perseverance. He's a truth teller, a warrior in words, and a master of turning hardship into healing. Whether he's talking about life-altering reflections from the trenches of service, identity and transformation. So buckle in. This ain't your average interview. Because here on the scoop, we're going to get it in and we're going to go deep. So, hey, my man, Anthony, what's up? Welcome to the scoop, brother. How you doing? Look, I said, oh, I came on. I see the shirt. I see the hat. I said, I need to go relax. I said, so let me go put on the hat and let me go put on the shirt because it's going to be a fire interview. How you doing today?
Hey, I'm good, brother. Hey, thanks for having me. It's so good to be here, man. It's going to be a good one, man.
Man, so I appreciate you coming on and, you know, I already shared this with a couple of my people. So today we're going to be talking about this. Y'all see how small it is? It's right here in the palm of my hand. But guess what? This thing is so action-packed. You could drop it in your cargo pocket. You could put it in your bag. You could put it in your back pocket. It's about some of us size of phone, but this right here, this memoir, it hits hard. And we're going to talk about it. We're going to go through it. We're going to navigate through it. But before we do that, and what's the scoop on you? Let's get a little background about you. I mean, we spoke before I hit the record button, but I know people that's coming on here like, yo, why Kings is so excited? Why he's so excited today? Because I aligned with you, bro. Like this book right here, it's gonna stay in my pocket because, man, this is powerful. So I want to say thank you before we even start for even thinking of putting it into this in this power pack form, and then actually being able to share your story when you was read. Because as we talked about before, a lot of times we tend to hold our story back because we think people are going to judge us. We think it's going to be used against us. But you say, you know what? If I went through this, I know others have, so I want to help others so they don't have to experience what I experienced. At least they know they're not the only ones going through it.
100%. Yeah. You know, it's one of those things. I said no to telling my story like 100 times. You know, in the book, I get into, you know, I decided to get help at the end of it, right? And I did the prolonged exposure treatment, and part of that treatment is really what you're doing is you're writing down. They're getting to the root cause of what's, you know, causing these demons or whatnot, and you write it out, you know, and write it out to the point where, like, you know, you tell someone the story, you get comfortable being uncomfortable, if you will, you know, and basically the trauma part of it. The first time I told the story, man, I cried like a baby, honestly, and even the psychiatrist, you know, cried, and you know, when she's like, you should tell your story, and I said no like 100 times, and then when I got out and that dust settled, right, that, you know, loss of identity, sense of purpose, all that was gone. I was like, you know what, maybe I should bleed this on the page, man, and, like, you know, pay it forward. And if one person gets help and realizes it's okay to be not okay, or okay to be not okay, right, and to get help, then that's a blessing, man. That's a win. So that was really the reason I wrote it, you know, to pay it forward. And if someone sees it and gets help, that's a win, man.
Ash, I appreciate it. So, like I said, I read, you know, your journey and story, but where did you start out from? How did you get into the service, and why special missions aviation? Because I tried that route and they told me I couldn't because I had flat feet and stuff. So I had to go and be a defender and be on the ground. But, you know, you made that choice because it takes a lot to get into that career field. Because I know that you said when you was younger, you was at C's get degrees, but then you figured that you needed that
100%.
in aviation. So yeah, let's talk on that. What's the scoop on that?
Yeah. So, I get to my senior year in high school there, approximately 17 years old. And, I realized, man, like, I had terrible grades, not doing the right things, getting a little trouble, stuff like that. And, my dad's like, hey, son, like, you're about to be a man, right? Like, it's time to get a job, go to college, or get out. That typical dad talk that a lot of us get, and, I talked to like an Army recruiter that didn't work, a Navy recruiter talking about being on a boat for 6 months. I was like, no, and I was like, I'm talking to my dad about, quality of life of the Air Force. And I didn't have a clue what I was doing, man. I'd been on like, one helicopter flight my whole life, and that was it, and that was like a tour type thing. And, that's next thing you know, June 18th of 2000, man, I'm on a flight from, Charlotte to San Antonio. First, time to flight ever, sort of ironic. And, I came in as a weapons loader, did that for 5 years. Long story short, then I did, the fire department for 5 years. And then in 2010, I'm at a fork in the road, if you will. I'm at home with some friends at a pizza parlor. And I look out, man, I see the same cracks in the road, and I realized that moment, man, like, when we die, man, like you can't take anything with you, man. There's no, what's the quote? No U-Haul behind a hearse, right? Like, all you can do is leave behind your legacy, how you're remembered. And I was like, you know what, like, I don't leave cracks, I don't leave craters, man. And to leave craters, you got to learn to walk and fly with giants, man. And the mighty AC-130 gunship and the 16th Special Operations Squadron gave me that chance to leave my mark, leave my small footprint, if you will. And I'm very thankful for that. So
And so you said the John Greer. So for the non-veterans out there, and for the non-military exposure, definitely, especially from one of the ground crews, that hey, when we seen that thing come across the air and see and hear that nice echoing sound from the sky, So where Ann is saying is like, is this big aircraft with propeller wings and has a long cannon
oh yeah.
on the
Yeah.
side of it, have a couple of machine guns. But yeah, that thing used to help out some ground troops. So just for the ones who like, man, what's the AC-130 gunship? Like, just think of it as a slow moving, very precision engaged beast.
Oh yeah, yeah. It's I like to, like, if someone doesn't know what it is, a lot of times I'll just bring up the Tyrese scene in Transformers where he's like, "Bring the rain," right? Like that famous scene. And it's like we even put a Decepticon on the gunship, after that movie. But yeah, but basically the thing about the gunship is you're there to provide that timely, precise, close air support for those unconventional forces, those super ninjas is what I call them. Your SEALs, your Green Berets, the ground guys. And there's really two types of gunship missions. There was the ones that you plan and you brief for, and you go on this operation, and there's usually somebody getting rolled up and bagged and tagged, at the end of it. And then there's the kind where, like, you get a troops in contact, right, and you launched within 15 minutes, and like you said, you get within 7 miles out or so, and they hear your props and they just start running like bees. And it's something I never really got used to, man. Was that feeling, when you hear those words, you're cleared to engage, and knowing that yeah, you're taking lives, man, but you're saving these Green Berets lives and stuff like that. And there was a point in my career, and I'm sort of starting to see the end of the tunnel and the career's being over. And there was a letter, man, at the squadron, and it was a ranger, and he's holding his baby girl, and he's like, thank you, to the 16th and the gunship. I get to go home and see my girl because of you guys. And that was my whole why, my whole reason for being, and when the dust settles and you're out, man, and that sense of identity is gone, that's where the demons come. And it's I'm a big fan of every veteran has a story, and you feel a lot better if you just bleed it on the page, man. And so I'm glad in the end I'm glad I did it. So
Yeah, I appreciate that, and that's why I was gonna come and ask. So, Moonchild, like, when did you decide, like, I'm going to sit down and I'm gonna just let it bleed out on paper, and I'm gonna, like, the name of the book is gonna be Moonchild. Like, where did that title come from? I know it came from in the book, but if you could just share Moonchild, because it has ties to your military career as well.
oh yeah, yeah. So I was born April 7th of 1982, and it was a full moon that night. As what my parents told me. And flying on the gunship, man, is like, the night was my lighthouse, or the moon was my lighthouse many nights, man. It would highlight the terrain, the enemy tracer fire. It made flying almost effortless, man. And so I had this thought, of like, you know, those darkest moments, right? Those when everything's against you, man, whether it be your emergency procedures, the weather, your communications, your gun malfunction, whatever the case may be, that's that's when you know, you have to be your very best, man. On your worst day of your life, being your very best. And what I mean by that is the metaphor of like, you know, the darkest nights, man. That's when the moon burns the brightest, right? So, you know, you don't get to fall, you get to rise. And you know, there's a if I could, man, I'll read this quote in the beginning. My favorite quote
Sure,
here is
yes.
it's Rita Clint, and it says, "Stay wild, Moonchild. I will shine my full silver light on your path, Moonchild. Trust your intuition and follow your dreams. When I go dark, go within and tend to yourself. Set your goals and release what no longer serves. When I come out of the shadow, Moonchild, go, be brave, and to yourself, stay wild and true." Rita Clint. And that's always stuck with me, man. You know, it's just die living, man. You know, live a house money life. Don't leave anything on the soul that, you know, you can't take it with you. So you might as well just get it done now, you know?
Right. And that in chapter one of your book, you said you can't make a living looking out of a window. And the spark, when you realize watching life isn't the same as living it, you know, you talk about a great question. So take us to a moment that seeing out of a window that when did you know it was time to move?
You're talking about to join to basically join the Air Force at that point?
Right.
Yeah, yeah. So, you know, my one of my teachers, you know, and when I went back home to do a book signing, everybody asked me who it was, and I, you know, couldn't tell them, but they all knew, I think. But you know, said something to the effect of, "Hey, you can't make a living looking out a window," you know, and I don't know, it just made me think, like, you know, I do terrible grades, right? Like, basically, what she was saying is like, you know, you're not going to be anything, you know, and it was up to me to like to find a way to make a living, to make something out of myself, to leave my mark, to leave my footprint. And so it lit a fire into me, man, in some way, shape, or form. To next thing you know, man, I'm thousands of feet in the air looking out the window of an AC-130 gunship. You know, and it's just the irony of that. You know, sort of paint that picture of, you know, basically you're never out of the fight, man. There's always a way.
Yeah, and that's huge, especially for our veterans and our young, I call it young humans, right? And our young humans, the ones that basically have the bricks or stuff that's stacked against us, right? You know, the thing
Right.
like, oh, you're not gonna amount to nothing, you're not gonna be anything, and then in your mind's like, I am gonna be something. Watch, I'm gonna show
Oh
you.
yeah.
You know, when I was younger, I had the same thing. I'm from the city. It's like, oh, you're gonna be one or two things out of dead or in jail. And I was like, no,
Yep.
I'm gonna be something. I'm gonna go into
Yeah.
the military. And ironically, I became law enforcement, right? You know what I'm saying? Like it's just, and I had a great career. But like you said, that always played a factor in the back of
Oh
my
yeah.
head. Like, okay, yes, I'm gonna be something. Watch, I'm gonna show you.
Yeah, it was a huge motivator, man. You know, that's what's cool about the military and the Air Force, everything, man, is we all come from different walks of life, man, and we've all had somewhat in some way a similar path. You know, if you really think about it, you know, and we're all just you know, in the end, man, just trying to make this world a better place, right? And that's where, like, you know, you do get brothers and sisters, and you know, there's people I haven't talked to in years, man. Like I've never met you in my life, but I feel like I know you, right? Like it's just this connection, you know, of
Yeah.
like this similar path, you know, and I feel blessed for that, you know.
Man, that's huge because, like I said, this everybody's like, "Oh, this book is so small, it's so small," but it's what I mean, like it's action packed. I didn't even put it down. Like, man, this is because I went to chapter one. I say, "Oh, I was gonna put it down." I was like, I went to chapter two because chapter two talk about live a house of money life. I was like,
Right.
wow, what does he mean by that? You know, operate with nothing to lose. It's like putting all your chips to the center of the table. I have nothing to lose. I'm gonna give everything. Like, I'm gonna show. It's like we talked about proof of yourself. Like, I'm gonna show you. Oh, I'm not gonna amount to nothing. Okay, hold my beer. Watch this.
Yep, 100%. Yeah. Yeah, and it's you know, it's if you ever been gambling, anybody that's ever gambled like Vegas, playing blackjack, whatever, like how much more would you gamble, right? How many more chances would you take? You know, if you played on the house's money, right? The casino's money, you know, and it's it, basically like, you know, like I said, die living, man. Like I heard a quote the other day. I don't know if I fully agree with it, but it says something to the effect of like empires are built on taking risk, like 9 to 5s are built on avoiding them. You know, and it is taking risk, you know, it's trusting yourself, it's trusting your faith, trusting your God, trusting your brothers and sisters that everything's going to be all right, man, in the end. And you know, we're going to win this thing, you know.
Yeah, man. That is huge because it's you know, my moms and dad always told me like, you know, when you playing with house money is different than playing with your money, right?
Oh
It's
yeah.
like you know,
Yeah.
you go to Vegas stuff, they give you the house money, right? You like, oh man, let it ride on all black or this, but when
Yeah.
it's your money,
Yeah.
it's like, okay, well, you know, I'll take
Yeah.
a little bit, I'll put it here, I'll put it there. So it's like, you know, man, when you said that house, I was like, man, I started to think about that, and I think about, you know, the lessons that we get taught when we're younger, which it comes into how we move it now in life.
Right. Yeah, yeah, it's, definitely, like, if we don't take chances, we're not gonna get anywhere, right? Like, for example, like, man, I probably read on a 5th grade levels, and somehow I got a book out, because I took a chance on contacting a war journalist, and she said yes, and next thing you know, I got a book, and I got a publisher, and just you guys, for example, like, took a chance on your podcast, but, in the end, it's all for a good thing, right? It's all for like, this isn't about me, right? This is about, like, hey, like, if someone sees this and gets help, that's a win. And your guys' podcast has a very similar theme to that, and it is paying it forward. And sometimes you got to take risks to do that.
Take a risk against the wind.
Oh yeah, yeah,
Against the wind, navigate resistance
yeah,
from within and with and without. You see how it just goes so fluid, right? Because it's like you're going against. Have you ever ran against the wind before? Or when you're in aviation, you're going against the wind, and I'm
right.
sure that y'all probably had to give it more throttle. You had to give it more speed just to cut through that wind.
Oh yeah, yeah, and it's like the and what I was getting at with that, an aircraft takes off against the wind, not with it. It means like where would we be in life without friction, without problems coming up here and there? That's part of resilience, man. That's part of our struggle. The struggle is the beauty. You talk to like was it David Goggins is always saying like there's this struggle and this going through these really hard miserable times, but if you can get on the other end of that, man, we're made out of rock at that point, right? We're indestructible. So you have to take off against the wind. That resistance is gonna lift you up, is what I meant by that. So
Right. And so one of the things that you would share with us here on the scoop about, you know, like personally, professionally, or emotionally, that when you had to your journey go against the wind? Because I'm sure you said that 5th grade level, right? Reading. So like
right.
going against the wind right in this book right here, like how long did it take you? Because me, I'm terrified. Like you have a 5th grade, like I'm so terrified. People keep saying, oh man, put a book out, but I'm like doubting myself. It's like that imposter syndrome. Like, man, who's gonna buy it? Who's gonna read it? Who's gonna, but here you are. I'm sure that was going through your head too. Like, man, is somebody really gonna read this book? You know, I put it out here. Is it just gonna be floating around in the internet and nobody's gonna care? But like I said, man, it's already changed my life. So how does that? How would you help others like push forward against the wind, go against the wind, especially when you have now a published author?
Yeah, yeah. I would say that think about the end game here, right? Like so, I'm talking about like, you can't take anything with you, right? When you die, you can just leave your legacy. And, what is brief mortal life if not the pursuit of legacy, right? Like, I got to thinking about it. I was like, man, I don't know my great, 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 great grandfather's name. I should, but basically when our grandkids and our great grandkids ask what we did in the wars, right? As bad as that sound wars, right? But like we could say, hey, we made a difference, man, and I believe every veteran has a story. I truly believe that. And there is the doubts, the things pop in your mind, like, man, is somebody gonna laugh at my story? Is somebody gonna say it's too short, too long, whatever the case may be? But in the end, it's your story to tell, man, and you should be proud of that. And whoever it is, like, if you have these emotions, these Charlotte's Web of emotional words, right? Instead of picking up a bottle, man, I picked up a pen and I threw it on paper. And I
Mm.
tried to make sense of this, man. And I feel like I'm a better man for telling that story. And like I said, in the end, if someone gets help because of that, that's a victory, brother.
Oh yeah, 100%. Making my bones.
Oh yeah,
You
man, come
you
on,
talk
bones,
about
yeah,
you
yeah.
talk about earning credibility the hard way. Explain that. Like, what's the scoop on that? Like, cause man, mm, earning credibility the hard way.
Yeah, yeah, so we, on the gunship, the whole reason you're there is I don't know how to say it, but it's to take a life, to
Mm,
save lives, right? But, I went, I don't know, forever without shooting, man, and then, one day, basically, like, we land from one operation, and we were reloading the tweak rounds, And what that is like, when you line your sights in your M4, you have to spend a few
Yeah.
rounds to line your sights, right?
Yes.
So I was loading that, and then
One click out.
the
Yes.
pilot, yeah, and the pilot comes back and he's like, "Hey man," he's like to all the gunners, we were all back there, and he's like, "Hey, there's a Green Beret team, pinned down." He's like, "Who's with me?" And our own version says, "Send me," and man, an hour and a half later, bro, I'm flying over this mountainous terrain in Afghanistan, and there's 3 Taliban guys with explosive packs shooting. I see the RPG flashes. Next thing you know, I get on the 40 mil, and my lead gun tells me, "Hey, man, your life's about to change forever. You're about, to be part of taking a life, right?" And I never looked back, man. This is what I want to do. We shot all 3 of those guys, and they, there were secondaries, etc. And in the end, when the dust settled, man, this rite of passage, like, man, like I performed in combat, right? Like, for my brothers on the
Yeah.
ground, and you realize, man, I realized that I'd done more in an hour and a half, 2 hour flight than I'd done my whole life for my country. And I was thankful for that opportunity, and I just, like I said, it wasn't about me, it was about those guys on the ground getting home to their family.
Right. And that's what you talked about in chapter 5, the Afghanistan routine, right? Like,
Yeah.
what did your routine in Afghanistan teach you about chaos, control, and coping? Like, because it's I tell people like, oh, what it was like. I say I can't explain it to you because it's different when you're there. It's different when you're in it. It's different. Like, you can look at it on TV all day long, but it's different when you're actually in the if you want to call it movie or whatever. It's different than actually being there watching it than in there in it, right? It
Oh
affects you
yeah.
differently. So between chaos, control, and coping, like, how did you start to navigate that or even work through that?
Yeah, that is a really good way to put, these a lot of these operations, especially if it's a troops in contact. Man, I remember, like, I'm gonna show my age a little bit here, but we had pagers, bro, literally pagers, and they would, like, and there were certain numbers that meant certain things, and, like, you would get an alert, right? Like, okay, you'd go to the talk, and they'd be like, "Yeah, these troops in contact. We need you guys in the air now." And there's this just all these different radios, comms going off, all this controlled chaos, like you were saying. And then there's this quiet, still moment to where, like, right before they clear you in the gauge, where the enemy just starts running, man. And then you fly overhead, and the pilot does his perfect pylon turn circle. And the next thing you know, man, you take that second, that tactical pause, and be like, okay, we're going to get these rounds out. We're going to save these lives, right?
Yeah,
And that there's just that moment. I don't know if almost a spiritual thing, between, your God and your brothers, and sisters.
right.
But that's, it's hard to paint that picture in words no matter how many times I try to do it, but I did my best with it, and, control chaos, that is a good way to put that.
Control chaos. And man, I tell people, our brothers and sisters out there that's still having that internal battle. Just like Ann said, like, it's okay to go, and if you need to write it out or go seek help, seek assistance into getting it out, because it will eat you up on the inside. Because that's what it did for me. And I told people, I had my internal battles to where I had to get professional help. And remember, and I tell you before we started, like, I was real embarrassed. I was, I faded out of life for a while because I did not want that stigma on me. But once I got that help, it's like it felt like a pressure, like a pressure release valve. Like, man, I'm not holding all this in because it was starting to get very hardened.
Yeah, yeah, and it was, the point I got help, I went from gunships to the HA-60, the Pave the Rescue, the Jolly Greens, and, I tell people that June 8th, 2018 mission, that Castovac, I saw the very best side of combat search and rescue, meaning we saved 5 lives, and the worst side of it, meaning American Eagle didn't make it back. And the mind is a tricky thing, brother. Like, you start thinking, like, man, if I'd have been there one minute earlier, 10 minutes earlier, all these different thoughts, and then I get to a point at the end of the book, right, where I'm realizing that, hey, my sense of purpose is gone, my identity, everything's gone, my reason for being. I started drinking a pint a day, more than a pint a day, almost a fifth a day to get to sleep, right. And then, it took that harsh reality of that, that not just when my wife told me, but that accountability mirror when I looked at that. And, that's the most honest conversation I ever had, was that day with, Jesus and myself, saying, hey, I do have a problem. I do need to get help, and I'll be better for that. I got a baby girl to think about at the time, so definitely
Yeah.
that talk when you have it with yourself, and it is okay to get help, like, as a flyer, we called it duties not to include flying, the NIF status, right? And I know you guys had, was it like do not arm or something like that? And
Yeah, DNA. Yep.
it,
Do not arm.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and it was the same thing, and nobody wanted that, right? But in the end,
Right.
there is a point where you're going to need that tactical knee, man, and it
Right.
helps, and you're better for it.
I know some of the things that got us through some long nights, and we talked about it earlier, is
Yeah,
the rippets, right? And then in your book, in chapter 6, you talk about the waffle man and rippets. I
the
tell you,
waffle
I
man, yeah, yeah,
so it's like those small, like you said, those small moments that build big memories, like stuff that you will not forget 15, 20. You're gonna be telling your kids, and then your kids are gonna be telling their kids. It's like,
oh
hey,
yeah,
you know what granddad did back in the
yeah,
war? And then you're gonna have on your veteran hat and like, well,
yeah,
back in my day, it's
yeah,
all about
yeah.
the small moments and the big memories. So share about that, bro. Like what's the scoop on that when you was putting that in chapter 6 of your book, The Waffle Man of Rippets?
Yeah, yeah. So the Waffle Man, this is a story. Looking back at it, it's funny now. But basically there was this guy. He worked on base right up in Bagram, right, and he was basically like a TC, and so they could come on and off base, right. And there was a situation. We get into this big shoot one night, and there was like another Green Beret team or whatever, and it was, I don't know, in the teens to 20, something like that, amount of EKA or whatever. And I didn't think anything of it, man. And like, but when we land, right, the next few nights, man, there's no waffles. There's no waffles. And like, we're all wondering, like, what's going on, right? And like, and then unfortunately, this guy he was a Taliban sympathizer. Then like, basically how we found out was one night, right before we get ready to take off for another op, the Green Berets come by and like, hey, like, just so you guys know, you guys smoked a waffle man the other night, you know. And I was like, well, everybody's like, man, he made some good waffles, asshole, And I was like, yeah, I know, he's not making them no more, right? But yeah, just those different missions that, man, that you can't even make this stuff up or write it in a book. It's just it's
Right.
basically how do you tell this stuff, and if without the humor, that dark humor, and then the rippets, everybody knows the global war on terror made rippets famous, and you're being dog tired and your buddy shotguns 3 of them just to get through a night. Like, that was all part of the experience and the part of the brother and sisterhood, that made that helped me make sense of all this.
Right, man. That's huge. And I tell you, and I challenge all the listeners stuff, like just look back at your life, like every little piece of your life and piece of your journey is all building blocks. It's like Lego building blocks. Because when you get this book right here, you're gonna come across chapter 7, right? And Ants talk about from courts to court, right? So he was pretty good at sports, right? He was a good athlete. I'm gonna let him tell y'all that, right? He went from athlete to advocate, right? So you speak about the transition from physical to verbal warfare. How did that shift the arena and change your leadership? Like how did that make you do that pivot?
Yeah, from so like the spiritual warfare, the
Yeah.
verbal warfare, like it is basically, facing the hard truth of like, hey, like telling myself I do have a problem, like it's out of control, like I need to get help after my wife told me that. And then the motivation, to thinking back those moments, hey, you're never gonna make it, you're not gonna make a living looking out a window, you're gonna amount to nothing, whatever the case may be. Well, I'm still on that journey, right? No matter how far I'm into it. And then the
Right.
physical part is putting that, those words into action, is basically like, hey, getting, studying to be a better aviator, knowing my technical orders inside and out, knowing my gun malfunctions inside and out, and basically putting all that blood, sweat, and tears into getting one round out, is changing those words into action, is what I mean by that.
Right. And you talk about words into actions. And for our Air Force listeners, we have these three thing our core values, right? Integrity first. And you put in your book service before self. And the third one is in excellence in all we do. But living that service before self,
Yeah.
before, during, and after, like, what's the scoop on that?
So before I joined that, those words literally meant nothing to me, man. Like, I didn't know what they meant.
Right.
I remember going through basic, just saying them because I had to, repeat them because I was taught to remember them, right? And then,
Yeah.
and then, unfortunately on June 8th, 2018, like, man, I remember after that castaback, some of that guy's brothers were trying to find like, enough OSB boards to build him a casket, man. And then there's this moment to where, everything was all said and done where they take him to the C-130 with with the flag over the casket, and that's when I realized really what service before self was about, and without these great men and women's sacrifices, we would not be the free, most powerful, free, richest country in the world's history, right? And it's all because of men and women like him on that very tip of that spear. That's what service before self was, forever etched in my memory and my heart at that point.
Yeah, because it comes down to the heavy days, right? And
Right.
this is in chapter 9. It's like the invisible way. And we talked about this before we hit the record button. It's like a lot of stuff. Cause this is what I dealt with, right? When somebody asks me, "Hey, are you okay?" Here was my response: "Yeah, man, I'm good. Everything's good." But when I was struggling and hurting on the inside. I was warned. It was a battle. It's still a battle right now. Every day is man.
Oh yeah.
It's like as soon as my eyes open, they inside and just
Oh yeah.
fighting and fighting. So you talk about chapter 9, the heavy days, the invisible weight that veterans carry, that veterans slash humans carry, right? Because it's not just veterans that's going through daily internal battles. So let's talk about those heavy days. How do you recognize them? Like what are some pointers you could give others that's listening in on how should they? You talk about one by writing it out, getting it out off your chest. What are some other ways? Like how do you lighten your load, or how did you lighten your load?
Yeah, for me, like prayer was a big thing and became a big thing later in my life. I'm a Christian, and I'm proud to say that, and I believe whatever your faith is, man, like the spirituality side of that, lean on that, because
Right.
there is, I like, this may sound crazy, but I truly believe there is spiritual warfare going on all around us. There's a good and there's a bad, and there's, we got good motivation, voices in our head, and we have negative, right? And basically, it's like the two wolves theory, right? It's the one you feed the
Yes.
most is going to win. So just say positive words and then put those words into actions, and I think I've heard either you or Sean in the past say something to the effect of helping is healing, right? And you
Yes.
feel better,
Yes.
like it, and it helps it even sink in more if you help, right? Whatever your version or outlet is to do that, if you pay it forward, help, man, you will heal as well with that person, is what I truly believe. So
Brother, I'm in lockstep with you because I shared with you before like my struggles and stuff, and I told you I shouldn't be sitting here talking to you like from coming back from a young kid, used to stutter all the time and very shy. You like, ain't no way. I was like, look, let me tell you, because sharing your story is healing, right? Because if and this is just King speaking, right? So if I could go back and talk to the 22-year-old Kings that experienced his first military situation, that kind of I started to pack it in from then as a young E3, um for my time in there, is that, man, and you said it perfectly, is that war, but is which one do you feed more? And
right.
I'm be honest with you, brother. I'm be honest with everybody here too. I was feeding the dark side a lot, and to
Oh
the
yeah.
point I showed you that picture, bro. Like I
Yeah.
showed you, you seen the
Yeah.
picture, you
For
seen it.
sure,
You was
brother.
like, wow, how long? Like that was me, like you said, feeding the negative energy, feeding like not the good side. Like everybody, like good and bad. Like I think when we're growing up, we know what's good, what's right, what's wrong. Like it's just that internal is our internal that pulls us to that.
Y-
And like you said,
yeah.
whatever you believe in is powerful.
Oh yeah, yeah, and you've heard people say speak it into existence, and
Right.
I'm sure like when you went on your journey, man. First of all, it's incredible how much weight you lost, man, and that, like, I couldn't even fathom the amount of work and like blood, sweat, and tears into each calorie burn, man. That's, I think that shows a lot about your perseverance and your commitment to those words, and turn them into action. You did it, right? I mean, that's incredible, man. You're still doing it, but yeah, I think
It was me and Goggins. I have
yeah,
Goggins
yeah,
in my
yeah.
ear every
Yeah,
morning, brother.
he is definitely a motivator. That, yeah, listen to that guy,
Yeah.
man. He'll make you want
Yeah.
to rip the paint off the walls, right? Like, yeah,
Right.
yeah, man. But yeah, you lived that, you did that, right? And I'm assuming a lot of that was saying, hey, I'm going to do this. Like, I'm going to get through this. Like, I'm going to get through this darkness, man. And I'm going to burn bright, man. So, and words do, they come out in the end. How you how you feed your emotions, your brain, your heart, your soul is what's going to be, what's on your plate in the end.
Man, that's fire because chapter 10 in your book, man, it sums it up perfectly because you have put roots and wings.
Right.
What grounds you and what lifts you. And and you talked about that. Your family, you say you family, mm,
Yeah.
your God, Jesus, you being a Christian, like what grounds you and what lifts you is powerful, bro. And that's one of the most that's my key takeaway of the book, right? How do you balance staying true to your roots while learning learning to fly? And I'm talking about, when you fly, but learning to fly in today's environment.
Yeah, yeah, and with the roots part, especially growing up in Appalachia, man, there's
Yeah.
a lot of things that are very unique to that area, right? And but basically the morals and the beliefs and the stuff my family back home instilled in me was awesome, and I wouldn't trade those lessons for anything in the world. But at the same time, man, like I want to leave prayers. Like I want to reach out and touch the face of God, man. I want wings, and the Air Force let me do that. So what I'm really getting at is, it's good to have your three F's, your family, your faith, and your friends, right?
Friends,
That's
yes.
that's what grounds me, But in the end, I still want to know where I'm going, and those same people lift me up to give me my wings, And I see that in the end,
Man.
life is really a yin and yang if you think about it, man. It is a balance,
Yes.
like you said. So.
You- Man, whenever you come from New Mexico, you pass through San Antonio area, man, come look me up because I'm going to show you. So, what I have on my, back in the day, I don't know if some people still do it, but so I have a thing around my rearview mirror. And I'm gonna take a picture. I'm gonna send it to you. But I have a yin and a yang that's on there that my daughter
Man,
gave to me when she was 5. So
that's
that's
deep.
that's
Yeah.
amazing. It's like confirmation. And you see what I'm saying? It's all like you will get confirmation from multiple people at different times. So you know that you're on the right track. And I know, and I'm telling you this right now, bro. Like you're on the right track because your book, Moonchild, and I wrote down 10 quotes. I'm gonna write it and it's going in my book. But when I was going through your book, I'm just gonna say the 10 so everybody could hear and hopefully we could touch on some of them. But this is what you wrote that came out of your brain onto that paper and was published for others to get it and
Oh
what
yeah.
it means to them. So just gonna share the 10 that I took away from the book. I'm gonna challenge all our listeners to when you get the book, find your 10. So here's my 10. You can't make a living staring out a window. That's what we talked about. But you
Right.
can't start dreaming through one. You
Man,
talked about that.
that's deep. Yeah, man.
That that hit me hard, bro. And each one. So I went. I'm gonna share how I read a book. Let me tell you how I read a book because I had to teach myself how to read because of my I had to get my brain rewired, right? So my memory is not as sharp as it used to be. So I have to kind of like skip around, but then I'll read through it, I'll skip through it, but then I'll go back and if I see a word or phrase that then I read it verbatim. That's how my memory kind of I'm trying to retrain myself. But here's
Gotcha.
the other 9 that I wrote
Gotcha.
down and highlighted. A house money life means living your souls already won.
Man.
Other one I wrote down. You find out who you are when the wind won't stop blowing. Next one I wrote down. Making my bones wasn't about toughness. It was about truth.
Oh yeah.
Next one I wrote down. Afghanistan was a routine of madness and meaning. I told you about my deployment in 2010. That's
For
why I
sure.
wrote that down.
For sure, brother. Yeah, it was appreciate everything you guys did too, man. And like I said, I know you responders, man. You're the first guys to see a lot of bad things, and I would assume a lot of that sticks with you, But I'm thankful for you guys, protecting everybody on base. So
Bro, you don't know how much this is helping. If I know it's helping me, I know it's gonna help others, right? Because I'm not kidding you, bro. When I went through your book, I was highlighting these 10 things I highlighted because it affected me straight to the core. Okay. The next one I put down was the Waffle Man give us more than food. He give us normal, right? Because
Yeah.
like the vision is different. You see what I'm saying? Like
Yeah.
it fluctuates,
Oh
right?
yeah.
That's how it meant to me, right? Like, man, okay, wow, I didn't see it that way, but hey, the Waffle Man, good
Oh yeah.
analogy. I put down the basketball court to the courtroom. The game is still survival.
Always. Yeah. Man, that's hard.
Service before self. Bro, like look,
Yeah.
that's how I said that this book right here is powerful. It's small and mighty. You know, cause that's the Jolly Green Giant. But you know what I'm saying? Like it's everything locks in with each other. You put service before self doesn't stop when the contract ends. You wrote that in the book. I agreed with it. I said, oh yes, that is so true. Because
Oh
I
yeah.
thought my journey was over when I had to separate from the military. But that's still with me right now. This is service before self. What we're doing right now, you and I having a conversation to where others are gonna get to this conversation and it's gonna help them service before self. This right here. Cause I asked you, I said, hey, how long do we have? He's like, yo, bro, I have now until you say it's over. I said, man, I appreciate that. That's service before self.
Thanks, bro. I appreciate it. Yeah, and it's the service before self, like, man, that's a really good, like, the after not it doesn't stop when the contract ends, like, I get in the book about, like, every night, man, that, what's the old quote? Know thyself, right? Like,
Yes.
man, you look in the mirror, and I look in the mirror and I'm like, what did I do to make humanity a sliver 1% better today? That I can either say I did that or I didn't, and that's part of me being accountable to myself, being accountable to God, to my family, whatever the case is. There's always a way to make this world a better place, man.
Yes. Whew. Some days are just heavy, and that's okay. That was one of the things I had to battle with myself from 2018 to January of 2022 when I came when I came out the dog, right? It's like it was from 18, what's that, 4 years? I just faded to battle. Nobody didn't know I was out. People thought I was still serving from 18 to 22. But I told myself when I came out in 22, like when I reemerged,
Yeah.
I said, hey, it's okay. And
Yeah,
that's what you put in your book.
it's definitely you're gonna have those heavy days, and it's those darkest moments, and that's when everybody that depends on you, your family, your friends, your kids, that need you to be the very best you could be in that darkest moment, and like I was saying, man, that the darkest nights, man, that's when that moon burns the brightest, right? And that's living.
Yes. And this last one right here is like when I got to this, I wanted to circle back and reread everything again, right? Because it's every time I was reading it hit me differently because I was remember other things. But you put in there, roots remind you where you come from. Wings remind you where you're going.
Mm,
Let me say
yeah.
that again for everybody, for the people in the back. Okay. Roots remind you where you came from. Wings remind you where you're going. Now, before we transition off to the thing, like let's dive into that last one right there because I share with you, I come from the inner city from Brooklyn, New York. You come from the Carolinas, you in New Mexico, you had aviation. I was on the ground a pound. Like you said, and you talked about the roots, like where you got your upbringing, like how your family instilled you certain, I call it energy, right? Certain,
Right.
they filled up your tank with that 93 octane
Oh
to
yeah.
keep you burning. But you had to go in that vehicle, in that vessel, and then you had to get the wings to where you're going. So let's do a quick deep dive into that.
Okay. Yeah, so basically, getting out, like your family, your roots, your upbringing, right? That's awesome, but it is the most important thing. If I look back, I'm lost, man. In the end, so it's more important, like where I'm going, man. But that, like you said, that is my 93 octane, man. Is my family, my friends, and my faith to keep me going towards the next objective event. The next altitude, if you will. That's flying, man. Is dare to leave the ground, dare to leave the earth. You know, I think since the beginning of time, man has wondered. They say two things, but I say three. You know, is where do we go after we die? Right? Are we alone in the universe? And how does man fly? You know, which the Wright brothers answered at one point, right? And you know, and that's always a very spiritual thing when it's just you, you know, in the air, man. You know, and it's important to die living, to live a house money life, and if you want something in the end, man, go get it, man. Have that faith that you're going to get it.
Wow, I appreciate that. And before we transition on, how can they get a copy of this right there? How can they reach out to my man Ant Man? How can they connect with you? Because if I have more conversation, I like to have more conversations with you. Or, you know, I'm going to share my number so we could have more collaboration and fellowship, you know,
For
because
sure.
this right here is very powerful. But how can they get a hold of this book? How can they get a hold of you? How can they, you know, break bread with you per se?
Yeah, no problem. So, on Amazon or Barnes& and Noble, basically wherever they sell books online, you can look up, Moonchild, The Roots and Wings of a U.S. Air Force Combat Specialist and Aviator, and my name, Anthony Dyer, even Moonchild and Anthony Dyer, and it'll come up there. And, I know, Trait Marker Media, my publisher, Robbie Grayson, has a page there. You can buy it there, and then I have a Facebook page, it's just called Moonchild, and it's me looking out the window of my MVGs, and yeah, and I guess the Instagram handle, I guess that's what we're calling it these days, is the handle, right? Is the Marco_Brolo 21. So yeah,
Man, I appreciate it, brother. And thank you once again for sharing your story, sharing your journey, sharing your memoir for others to break the stigma of holding it in, for keeping
thanks,
it to
Kings.
themselves.
Kings, I really appreciate the platform, man, and you have an awesome platform to make people better, man. And we all of us vets appreciate you guys, man, and thank you for what you do. Thanks for having me. So
I appreciate it. And remember, everybody that's listening in, vet, non-vet, supporter, you do not have to drown in the sea of transition. Grab that VET S.O.S lifeline. We're here to help. Once again, thank you, and I appreciate you, and I appreciate everybody. Until next time, peace.
thanks, brother.